Good day to all you safety champions out there, and welcome on board of another episode of the Focus Sessions. It's easy to forget that thousands of professionals in Africa, you and my guests here at the table, work hard every day at making commercial aviation the safest form of transport, also in Africa. And you don't do that because you expect special recognition. You think safety and act in ways that promote safety because you know the aviation industry and your country depends on that, and because it's the right thing to do. We salute you for your dedication, and we're here to support you in your role as a safety champion. You are part of our family. With the Focus Session, AviAssist brings you affordable and certified continuous professional development to help raise the bar on safety in Africa. We inform, inspire and entertain African aviation safety in our Focus Sessions. We will also be answering questions from you, our viewers. We may not have time to answer all your questions, but we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. This episode is sponsored by aircraft manufacturer Boeing. And today we'll be talking about cockpit and company authority gradients. I'm joined at the table by three guests from across the industry and across Africa. My first guest started originally trained in hotel management. Bruce Mukabi entered the aviation industry as a ramp supervisor with Air Kenya, spent quite some years working in the United Arab Emirates for ground handling company Danata and Emirates Airlines, and now heads up quality assurance, safety and security with one of our corporate friends, Safari Link Kenya. Karibu Bruce, and great to have you with us here today.
Thank you, Tom, and great to be here today.
I hope you had a pleasant journey to come here.
Oh, certainly.
Certainly. That's great to hear. Well, our second guest today benefits from her precision skills she got as a trained accountant. Her first job in aviation was at a travel center account officer, where she then grew into various audit and compliance roles, and now heads up safety as the manager risk at Overland Airways in Nigeria. Welcome to our table, Aderonke, and great to have you here as well.
I'm very happy to be here.
So we have East Africa, West Africa. Fantastic. Welcome there. Thanks so much. And our third guest is Captain Mary Mukulu Kai, all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. Mary has been a captain with Kenya Airways for many years, was the manager of flight operations at one of Africa's leading civil aviation authorities, the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, and currently is the Chief Operations Officer with Peniel Air in Nairobi. Mary, karibu.
Asante sana.
Karibu. In the studio here in the Netherlands. Did you have a good journey over here as well?
Yes, I did. Very pleasant.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much. Well, a table full of guests from across Africa, east to west, and thanks for making the journey all the way here to the Netherlands. Let's get started and talk about authority gradients, both in the cockpit and outside. And Bruce, let me start with a question from one of our viewers. He or she remains anonymous, prefer to lodge the question anonymous. The question is, how do we remove the big man syndrome in the African setup, where everyone of rank is considered above the law, whereas their knowledge and safety is at times minimal? How do we address that big man syndrome?
Wow, such an intriguing question.
That's only the start of the years.
Thank you for the question. I think first what comes to my mind when you talk about the big man syndrome, I look at the genesis of why it's there. So it's very difficult for you to tackle something when you don't understand why it's there. And when you talk about Africa, I look at the cultures and how we are socialized in Africa. And you'll take note that it's such a communal setup. And most of these cultures are communal in nature. So everything, our social, economical approach has always been communal. And as a result, there's always one person who stands out and will always be given the throne. But one thing that these cultures have not done really well is to make sure they position this person who stands out to be good for leadership. And case in point is when you talk about leadership with attributes like empathy, for instance. When you don't condition your leader to be like that with empathy, what you're bound to get is more of a challenge, because it's either default settings, which could be a military approach.
Yes.
Yeah, and often this is what contributes to that. So the best thing to do is, I think, lots of leadership training that is required for these leaders, so that you condition the leaders and you prepare them into into leadership. Leadership is demanding. It's a role that you need to come out, and you can never. There's nothing that compensates for the sacrifice of being a leader. So for that reason, equally, again, we need to invest a lot into preparing for this leadership. And that will mean a lot of training into the leadership attributes. The soft skills are so important when it comes to leadership. The new management order requires that a new leader has got to have soft skills. Mm-hmm. So without the soft skills, then it's a challenge. And I think that is what we are talking about in this.
To address this big man syndrome.
Yes.
I think it also means that something we've seen as AviAssist as well, that it's one thing to train people just on safety, if you can say just on safety, but if they don't have these leadership skills, they may be managers, but it's not the same sometimes as leaders, or often not indeed.
Yeah.
Aderonka, how does that reflect with you? How do you see that perspective?
Thank you very much. The gradient will always be there.
The authority gradient will always be there.
Authority gradient will always be there. It's something we have to manage to be able to achieve our desired results. At times, the question we ask ourselves is that why do authority gradients exist?
Yes.
Somebody has to stand out and be a leader. But what I've observed over time is that in preparing people for leadership, there's certain process they need to go through that becomes part of them. And as they climb up into the leadership position, they understand what the expectation is. And that when you are in a position of leadership, it's not about breathing down the authority, but to achieve a particular goal or aim. And that's what we should focus on. And I think that's why we're here in this session, to have a discussion about
that, and to move away from this breathing down somebody's neck, as you said. Mary, you've had different roles, from in the cockpit at Kenya Airways with the regulators, now again back in the operational side of things. Yes. Any suggestions how we can lose this big man syndrome, apart from what we've just heard from Bruce and Aderonka?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I agree with them. And then the other thing as a leader is you need to be confident in who you are. That way, the fact that you're able to listen to others and you're ready to get back feedback, it doesn't change the role. You're still the leader. And I think that's a part when you have that authority gradient, if you look at it at the background, at the root cause, what Bruce was saying, it's because you don't really quite understand what the leadership is. So if someone who is beneath you tries to suggest something, then you take offense, or you feel that they're a threat. But if you know yourself who you are, then why is it a threat? The person is just making a suggestion. Yes.
And it may enrich your operations and enrich your leadership as well. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And that's actually a nice question I could bring in here. And maybe if I start with you again, Mary, from Freddy Kidare in Rwanda. Mm-hmm. His question is, what steps can leaders take to empower frontline workers to speak up about safety despite barriers of hierarchy? So what can we do to almost train the people that have to give a message to a leader? What suggestions could you give to train those people?
The suggestions I make is to have informal meetings. You can make it either every week or every 2 weeks. And when you meet, you can meet either over coffee, tea, just something very informal. And then you can start, you being a leader, you can give like a vulnerable situation that you're in and where you needed help from someone. Whatever it is that is challenging you at that point, say, hey, this is what I'm going through. What do you think?
So
and
this
then
is the leader now asking the subordinate.
Yeah. And then be specific. Don't ask generally. Like I can say, hey, Tom, what do you think? I'm going through A, B, C, D. What's your suggestion be? Because if you ask in general, everybody will keep quiet thinking it's a trick question. Yes. And
so what suggestion would you give? What type of questions should we ask?
The suggestion, depending on what is happening at that point that we're in, let me think of a real-time situation.
So related to a situation that actually happens.
Related to a situation that is happening at that point, yes. Yeah. So it's not theoretical. It's something that is practical happening in the department or in the company. And then you ask for, for suggestions or decision making. I can give an example like us running a charter company. Sometimes there are so many bills that you need to pay. So when we sit down with our accountant, we'll actually put it on the table and say, hey, who do you think we should pay? This is the money that we have right now. And we've actually seen over the years, she's become more confident, because when she gives us suggestions, I think, let's start by paying so-and-so, and then we can always talk to this other person. It builds her confidence. And now the next time she has a problem, she'll always come to us knowing that we listen to her.
So take a humble attitude almost as a leader, and not think that whatever somebody's going to tell you is criticizing your leadership, basically.
Exactly.
Aderonka, there's a question from Helen Ndichu in Rwanda for you. What techniques, so this is turning it around really, what techniques can we teach junior staff to become more assertive? So what can we give those more junior staff to sort of, not challenge the authority, but at least, become more assertive in asking those questions?
Okay, for a junior staff, it's being assertive is everybody's responsibility. For example, safety, it doesn't stop at the leadership position. Safety is everybody's responsibility. Everybody is a safety officer, everybody is a safety champion.
Yeah.
And so wherever you're located, you have a responsibility to ensure the location is safe, your desk is safe, everywhere around you is safe. And in that process, you encourage the junior staff to own safety, to own incident around whatever reporting that they want to do around their own location. And when junior staff are able to report and be able to assert about a situation, not an individual now, it's about a situation, about a problem. Our focus should be on the issue, not the personality. Mm-hmm. And as a junior staff, you must be able to make your suggestion, make your recommendation in a very civil manner, and not so that you can pass the right message to the authority or the senior or the leadership of where the message is about to be passed across to. Focus on the message. And
you were saying the word assertive. Indeed, we recently did a course in Rwanda where that was a concept which was not always easy to understand for some of the people in training. What would you say? What is assertive? What is assertiveness?
Assertive is about to speak. Is just about speaking up about an issue. Knowing fully well and understanding, of course, which can be achieved through training, that keeping quiet, it's not the best when it comes to this issue. I tell my team back home, when there is a risk and you don't mention, you don't report, when that effect of that risk comes, it doesn't come on the person that exposes us to that risk. It covers everybody. Mm. If somebody throws a lighter now and starts smoking here, if there's going to be fire, the fire is not going to meet the person that started the fire. Everybody in this room is going to be consumed. Mm-hmm. So when you give such examples to them, that the effect of keeping quiet, not being assertive, it's worse off than just saying it the way it is. So don't color it, just say it the way it is.
And speak up, not just when something negative has happened, but also before.
Before it happens.
It's time for the first letter of our prize draw, actually. But before I give you that first letter, let me briefly explain to you how the prize draw works. In the draw, you have a chance to win $100 in cash in each episode. And we do this for two reasons. The first is that the game, the prize draw, will give you some insight into what inspires my guests here at the table. And the second one is simple. It gives you a chance to win $100. Now, you'll see a web address at the bottom of the screen. At that page, you can submit the 3 letters that I'll give you throughout the broadcast, and that, together, form a 3-letter code. Every 10 minutes or so, we'll show you one of the favorite books of a guest here at the table. And all you have to do is write down the first letter of the first name of the author. And you'll end up with a 3-letter code. You enter those 3 letters on the Google form page and then click Submit. But you can only submit your 3-letter code until 15 minutes after the end of this focus session. From among the correct answers, we'll draw one lucky winner and send that person her or his $100 by mobile money. We'll announce the winner on our LinkedIn page, so that's an extra good reason to follow us on LinkedIn. Right, our first book is by Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Humble book. I'm trying to think who. Aderonka. Yes. So why did you bring this book to the studio today?
Okay, it's very interesting to know that this book, it's a reflection of what we're discussing here. It's about authority gradients. Leaders eat last. In our culture in Africa, we tend to focus more on the leaders than the followers. What this book is saying is to rearrange the thought to say, as a leader, you have a responsibility to look after your team, to ensure your team members are okay before you start considering yourself. And it's one of the reasons why some teams, they pull through, even when they go face through challenges, some don't pull through. So the question is why? It's because of the position of the leader and the perspective of the leader in sense to say, I don't eat first, but I eat last.
Last. Oh, very humble lesson indeed. Thanks so much, Aderonke. Now, before we go back to our discussion here at the table about authority gradients, let me tell you about another reward from our focus sessions that you can get next to winning $100. We also offer you a chance to qualify for a certificate of attendance, following requests for that from our viewers. To qualify for a certificate of attendance, you must watch 100% of each session and score 75% or higher on the end assessment that will become available on our website after this broadcast. But the assessment will only be available for 48 hours after the broadcast, and that means you best watch the live broadcast so that you have enough time to complete the assessments on our website. Now, enough about rewards. Let's get back to this discussion on authority gradients. Aderonke, this is a question from Helen, which we've actually already addressed, how to train junior staff on being more assertive. Bruce, if I bring this to you, SafariLink has gone through quite a growth over the past decade or so. Have you specifically paid attention to this authority gradient and to training leaders that you spoke of earlier?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I think we've had to intentionally make some steps towards addressing that element because the industry now provides for pilots who are formally in military,
yes.
and that means they've gone through a different kind of conditioning. And then now when they come to civil, they need to be wired differently, because certainly you're bound to get this. So yes, so there's been those elements that we've over the years, and we continue addressing just to make sure that we improve to that. And the message you're sending is certainly the same message Aderonke just shared, and I'm stuck at the example she gave when she spoke about someone smoking in, and we all need to take ownership of the risk that is ahead of us. So this is the same approach that we send out there on each and every scenario that we can. Now, we borrow and learn a lot from the case studies. And I think our trainings, our in-house trainings have covered this. We try as much as possible to reinforce on that element because we can't run away from it. And that is for sure.
And I think indeed that's why I really like your book, Aderonke, indeed, Eat Last, because very often, I used to live in Zambia for many years, and there people would say, it's now my time to eat. Yes. I think this example is you're laughing, Mary, do you recognize that? How is that in the operations you've been involved in terms of addressing that leadership and particularly that authority gradient? I mean, you've been in the cockpit, but also in a managerial role. How did you address that?
Personally, I address it like the example that I gave earlier on. I like hearing from other people. I like making them comfortable. It's the same way that he said, if someone is comfortable, then someone else is smoking or they want to smoke, they wouldn't do that knowing that they're going to jeopardize the lives of so many people. But if you have that authority gradient, they wouldn't say what needs to be said the time it's supposed to be said. And at the end of the day, it ends up hurting more people than when it's not. Because I can use an example of, let's say, the CRM issue. I mean, it actually came up initially, it was cockpit.
CRM as in?
Crew resource management,
yes. Thank you.
I'm saying earlier on, it used to be for cockpit only. And the reason why it was that way was because you find that many first officers, back to Bruce saying, because of most captains were military trained, then they have this thing of don't talk to me because they are trained for war.
I have more stripes on my shoulder.
And you have to understand the background they come from. When you're being trained for war, you don't have time to start questioning your authority. You're fighting an enemy. And that's where they are coming from. So I know because of a lot of that authority gradient, that's a reason why now they came up now with the crew resource management. So back to your question about myself, is just to make everybody be at ease, being at ease does not mean that you become slothful, you become disrespectful. No, it's just the environment to be friendly and to be safe. Then that way we can be able to discuss what's going on.
Like you gave the example of sitting down in an informal setting with a cup of coffee, or
yes.
Time for our second book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini. So the letter you need is the Romeo. I think the influence came from you, Bruce. Briefly, why did you take this book to the studio? How is it inspiring you?
Okay, so that book, Influence, is a great book, and this is more of a foundational go-to resource for influence leadership and bargaining. It's more on business. Robert is a psychologist who's
you know him the way you talk about it, Robert.
When you read, I've read.
You feel like you know him by now.
I feel like I listen to what he says. Yeah, we communicate in that. Okay. Yeah. So this book is rich in terms of just the universal principles of persuasion, and this is what you need as a leader. You need this a lot. You need to persuade your downline to understand what, because at times as a middle manager, what happens is there are two levels that you're dealing with, and these levels' mindset is totally different. So how do you get them buy into the idea? In case you're the one who's bringing up the idea, how does it? How do you get to convince the guys below you that this is what we need to be heading, and this is the direction that we need to be going? So that book is quite rich when it comes to such elements. It has these principles for persuasion, and I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
From the book. If you had to find people maybe in a photocopier machine making copies, yes, and they are there ahead of you, and everybody is there because they need to do it, and it's quite important. So what this book teaches you is some very simple attributes. For instance, if I need to come there and do it before Mary, and I found Mary there, the only thing I might need to do is tell Mary, without her perceiving me to be rude, I'll probably need to tell Mary, I need to get 2 photocopies. Will you kindly let me get the 2 photocopies because? So the word that is being used there is because. Now,
explaining the reason.
Explaining the reason. But the way the human psychology is, probably you don't even need to explain the reason. You just need to say because, and Mary has already bought in that.
Okay.
So she will already start understanding that, okay, there's a reason why Bruce needs this more. And it gives you very, very trivial elements of communication that are key and striking you to seal the deal when it comes to a deal.
So trivially on one hand, but also very good tools to move forward.
Yeah.
Psychology of Persuasion. It'll go on my reading list. I must say, I've never heard of it.
I'll recommend.
You recommend it? Well, we'll hand out copies later on, maybe to everybody at the table. Excellent. We've got one more book remaining for a bit later in the show. Now, another question here I'd like to put to you. This one comes from Emmanuel Muhinda from Rwanda. His question is, authority gradients, hierarchical decision-making and command in aviation are essential to some extent. Should power distribution be based on seniority or on skills? I'm sure you have something to say about this, all three of you. Yeah. So you're laughing the loudest, Aderonka, so I'll start with you.
Okay, aviation is knowledge-based and is high on skill. So it's not about seniority. I will say it's about the knowledge and the skill that you have to. And say functions, it has nothing to do with the age or seniority. It has to do with, are you qualified to perform that function? Especially in aviation that is highly regulated and there are expectations. So that would be my own opinion about it.
On skills. But now I go back to Bruce, who was speaking about these former military people, for example. But it's not just the military people.
Sorry.
Some people might expect differently, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't have flying experience in my career, but I seem to be a safety manager who's got to oversee some elements of flight. Mm-hmm. And that would mean I'll have to interact with the pilots. So is it something that we'll face every day? Yeah, certainly it is something that we face each and every day. And you'll get a pilot who tells you you don't have that experience.
How can you be my safety manager?
My safety manager when you don't. Now, there's a reason why the wise guys decided, the wise guys of ICAO decided that a safety manager has got to have independent lines. So the pain of and the burden of making sure that this pilot understands this now is to you as a safety manager. But the way you're going to do it is not at the same level that he's doing it. Probably you just need to wait for him to move to your level or try and bring him down to your level for them to understand that. And that is now what determines the effectiveness when it comes to this communication. So it's a great deal in aviation, and it continues being a concern in terms of gradient, because it's about the authority, the power at any given level. Yeah. And this determines so many aspects of, like for instance, communication, which in turn determines what the culture is for the organization.
You mean in terms of the type of communication, the color of the communication?
Correct, thank you. So that determines what culture the organization will have. And you'll appreciate that now for you to advance in safety, then you need to work a lot towards a safety culture. So it goes down to the management style, it goes down to the communication bit, then and then you're talking about the culture. So if the organizational culture is in shambles, then expect the safety culture to really
be in shambles, or at least be crumbling.
Yes.
So Adonunka, that brings me to you. You know, thinking of those authority gradients, the question of Emmanuel Muhinda, should the power distribution be based on skills, on seniority? You did answer that to some extent already, but anything you want to add?
Okay, in addition to the allocation of responsibility, like I said earlier on, it's the skill to be able to perform a function, because aviation is highly regulated and is very high on training. So if you are not properly trained for a function, you can't even occupy that position in as much as you are a senior. So it's basically about having the skill, having the knowledge, and being able to perform the function. If a senior is able to do it, all well and good. But if a junior is able to do it by virtue of the fact that the junior colleague is already trained and is skilled and equipped for the assignment,
then it may mean,
it's okay.
And I think actually one thing which I noticed when I visited your facility in Lagos, and including your training school, what I found was very interesting there, that the dispatchers that you train also get a training of 1 day nowadays in etiquette.
Yes.
Because I think it was the point that Bruce was also raising, you know, if you want to speak and communicate in their case with the pilot, yes, they don't have to exactly know the world of the pilot, but for them to have slightly more of an appreciation of this pilot, which may visit night hotels and, you know, use knife and fork and all these things. Can you tell us a bit more about that, or is that not your forte? I mean, in terms of that training in the dispatchers?
Okay, etiquette is more of a soft skill training. You know, we focus more on the technical side, and over time we keep having CRM issues between pilots, dispatcher, engineers, cabin crew. And the focus of that etiquette is in as much as you have this function to perform, you must understand that there are ways to communicate and deal with other team members. And if you have that soft skill of being able to talk and communicate, you will get a better result. You get a more safer operations, and you get to achieve what exactly the airline is set to achieve. So basically the etiquette role, which is just a day training out of the days, is to explain to you the need that as you grow up, even in your technical skills, you need the soft skills to be able to remain and function as appropriate in your line of duty.
I thought that was very original, actually. Bruce, something you can take away, perhaps, if you don't already do it. I have no idea, but...
Yeah, because much as we say we want to be optimistic,
yes.
And what this brings to my attention is you don't just want to be optimistic, but you want to be realistically optimistic. And that will mean there's an aspect of skill, there's an aspect of confidence, and then there's an aspect of motivation that needs to go in. So in this context, I think it's more of the skill person being given the authority than the person who's in charge of a process being given the authority, because then it's pointless for you to achieve. If I have all the authority and then you're giving me a particular task, because I have the authority and I've got to make sure that someone else is going to do the whole thing, then that is how we kill. That's how we kill the system. So we need to make sure that we empower the right people to do it, and the right people, by definition, have got to be the people with the correct skills for it.
And I think this thing, which I remember the discussion I had with Julian, I think the director of your Landover Business School, Aviation Business School, is that he initially also had to convince the management, because they were saying it's going to cost us extra money to put this 1 day of training in there, but what is it going to yield us in terms of extra revenue? And it took quite some convincing from him, apparently, I understood, to get that in, right? Because it's not seen as a necessary skill for aviation safety people.
Yes, thank you. When you are introducing a change into the training, you need to be able to convince the leadership of the fact that what value is that particular training is going to bring on board. But like I explained earlier on, we need those soft skills to reduce all CRM-related issues. Otherwise, you spend more money on training and you spend more time on conflict resolution. So when you look at the benefit of having to go through being proactive in terms of passing those knowledge to your team members, your staff, compared to you have to settle conflict, crises on a regular basis.
In hindsight,
of course, it's an invitation to incident.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a very nice extension of what Mary was saying. It started out as cockpit resource management, and it became crew resource management. And Overland has now taken it even one step further to make sure that part of that crew, if you like, is not just a cabin crew and a cockpit crew, but it's also the dispatchers, etc. We have to come to our third book. I can see some of you itching to bring across a point, but first, the third book, John C. Maxwell, the 360-degree leader. The thing that's important for the viewers out there is the Juliet. Why this book? Why has it come to the studio, Mary? What does it do for you?
Actually, the book is a good continuation from what she said. As a 360-degree leader, you are looking at, before making a decision, overall, how is it going to affect everybody? To put it in terms of aviation, when I was still working for the airline, we had a situation where we had passengers on board, and we're wondering why, we're not being given the green light to leave. But there was a particular ground staff who saw that one of the other aircrafts, they arrived early. Mm-hmm. And so he thought that if I could transit these particular passengers to come into the flight that we were going on, he might save the situation. He didn't share with everybody else. So by the time they were coming in, they have to go through security, and then they came into our flight. It meant that we were late, and they were not meant to be on our flight. They were meant to go on a flight maybe a few hours later. So it affected everything else, because now the passengers on the other side, some of them missed their connection because of this one decision that he made. And so, of course, now when we came back, I wanted to know why.
Yes, because we're not interested in blame. We want to find out why.
Yes, we just wanted to find out why. And when I sat them down, I said, yes, you're trying to be proactive, to look that you're thinking outside the box, but you never looked at everything else. You never looked at the whole 360-degree leadership. Because of what you did, it affected all these other things. Yeah. So that's the reason why I brought it.
That's why you brought it. Thank you very much. It'll go on our reading list as well. We'll make the list available to the viewers out there. I think it's time to take another short break from the authority gradients, because for the people who are new to AviAssist, here's a short video that explains you what we are all about since 1995.
Africa, a continent on the rise. Africa is the world's second biggest air transport growth market, and there is a lot to do. Africa is in the process of giving the continental aviation industry a place on the world map on all fronts. This requires unprecedented efforts, even more so in a post-COVID-19 recovery. It means eliminating a backlog, but also respecting sustainability and CO2 emissions, building safety on the ground and in the air with technical and operational training, More than ever, international cooperation is vital to give what is arguably the most important economic link between Africa and the rest of the world, connecting people across the vast distances in Africa. An essential link, and that's why there is AviAssist. Africa and AviAssist. We have been leading, building and supporting safety promotion for the African aviation industry since 1995. Affordable, independent and professional. We stand up for aviation safety in Africa. We change attitudes and produce safety. Our professionals support African professionals, and we do it with passion by delivering on-site and online courses across Africa and more. AviAssist. Join us in Kigali or anywhere else on the continent. The African aviation industry needs you right now, more than ever. AviAssist.
That's us, passion and volunteers as the power behind our work in aviation safety promotion in Africa since 1995. Now let's get back to the authority gradients in our companies and cultures and cockpits. I have another question, a last question here from Sabina Mwanga from Uganda. He's asking us how to foster a culture where personnel is encouraged to communicate, plan and take advice from their subordinates. So from the other way around, how do we create that culture where people are willing to have that conversation? You spoke about Mary. How do we do that, you think, that culture?
I think first things first, as a leader, you should acknowledge your subordinate. Simple things like, good morning, how are you?
Okay.
You're not saying it out of obligation, but even when you're talking to someone, you actually stand. It will take you less than a minute just to say, good morning, how are you? And the person will say, fine. For as long as they see that you're making the eye contact, then they will see, oh, I matter and I'm valued as a subordinate. And then the next time you approach them and you ask them, hey, what do you think about ABCD? To be easy for them to be able to interact with you.
So you lower that threshold, if you like.
The gradient,
yes. Nice, simple trick, I guess, in some extent.
Yes.
Adronka, any suggestions for Sabina in Uganda?
Okay, I will look at it this way. You have to build relationship with your subordinate. And you must understand that everybody has a role to play. Even as a leader, you are leading people. You are not leading yourself. No. So when you have that understanding, you will be able to work with people and raise a team. And we must learn something to accept feedback, whether it's positive or negative, for the continuous improvement. That's what we talk about in aviation. When you get an assessment, you get to look at it for you to do better. So if over time, your subordinates have been doing things, you're acknowledging, like Mary said, good morning, even thank you,
greetings,
well
yes.
done. It doesn't cost anything. It's don't speak as a leader only when there is a problem. That's one of the culture at times in some organization where the only time you hear the voice of a leader is when there is a problem or there is a crisis. Yeah. But when your team has done excellently well,
also let them know,
achieved their target, acknowledged it, and it encourages, it motivates. So even when, with that, you build a relationship over time with your team members, and they can actually come to you and give you feedback. Like Mary said, you can even ask, what about this? What do you feel? Have I done it well? Have I not done it well? And you'll find out that it has nothing to do with seniority. Some subordinates might even have more knowledge.
Yeah.
In terms of in terms of even the subject at hand you are discussing, and we all add value to each other. Thank you.
And I think also on the point of feedback that you mentioned, we'll be doing our team leadership course, team leadership for aviation at Landover Aviation Business School later this year in May. And there, actually, in that course, the topic of feedback is something people really always want to know more about. Indeed, how to give, kind feedback, yes. Also when things go well. Bruce, any suggestions for Sabina?
I think it's probably just an add-on on what the panel has said. There are two aspects. One is what you do and the way you do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what you do goes to the basics, like sharing a table, for instance. In most organizations, in a formal setup, you'll find there's a table where managers just go and group themselves and sit, and then the rest of the staff will go and sit somewhere, and this is over lunch break. So you have to be intentional with making sure that staff makes up during this. That's the only thing that breaks this gradient. And then the second part is as well, when you're talking about feedback, how do you give feedback? The use of words like but. If I've got to tell you, oh, Tom, you did really well, but immediately I introduce that, what happens is I've taken you back to, I should not even have told you did well, because you go back to that. So it's how you give that feedback and the communication tone, the intonation that is used in the company, by and large, usually adds up into something.
Determines that. Well, yes. I can only say to the viewers, come to our team leadership course and then you'll learn all about, these things. We're going towards the end of today's broadcast. A final question for all of you at the table here. The elevator pitch question. So you find yourself in the elevator with your chief financial officer. You have $10,000 available, but you have to convince her or him what you're going to use it for to break down that authority gradient in your organization. Let me start in the middle. Mary.
I would actually tell them that you need to go for team building.
Okay.
That is one way of breaking the gradient, because we'll sit together as a team, and I've realized it will be a mixture. We are all going together, so you'll have management, subordinates, all in different teams. And you have to go through different obstacles and challenges and see who is going to be the winner. And as it will break the whole ice and it will make everything better. By the time we go back to the organization, then everybody will be at ease.
Okay, so $10,000 for that. Sounds like a very good cause. Leronka, what would you use the $10,000 for?
What I would call, from my background, is to invest.
As an accountant, you mean?
Yes, as an accountant on that subject matter, authority gradient, and you wait to see the return on investment.
But what would you invest it on? What would you use the money for?
Invest in training, awareness, promotion. You keep talking about it, you reward people, you talk about it, you encourage people. So when you invest more in training, people get to understand that the organization is really looking towards this particular subject and is doing something about it.
Okay, promotion as well.
Yes.
Bruce, bring me to you, the last one in the elevator.
I think a great deal of that has got to go into safety promotion. Safety promotion initiatives pretty much cover everything that you've got. And I would want to see staff competitive at all ranks and authority. So that you don't get to discover. I love when we go for a football match.
Which is like a team building thing almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the football match, there's no manager. There's no CEO. So what you get at the football match is players. So the same impression is what I'm going to invest in. So most of the initiatives that safety promotion will do, like for instance, the safety culture, building that, having debates among members and cutting across. I recently, case in point, is our last company safety meeting was actually a debate. And this debate was quite intriguing in terms of, and we had mixed. Team A had 3 pilots and ramp guys, and Team B had the check-in staff, the cabin crew and all that. And it was quite brilliant when you see them battle.
So you inserted an element of fun, basically.
Exactly, exactly. You said that, and softly what you're impacting is a good culture. And these are some of the initiatives that beat that. So yeah, that's where I'll take the 10.
That's where you take the 10,000. Thanks so much, Nashukuru-san. Lovely panel members. I'm afraid this is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for making your way here to the Focus Session studio and traveling from your respective duty stations from Nairobi and Lagos. A big thank you also to the team behind the scenes here in the studio in the Netherlands. Thank you, Monica, Eric and Dan, for your hard work and for accepting the flaws in my character. Then to you lovely viewers out there in Lumumbashi, to Juba, to Accra and Lagos, thank you for tuning in to Safety Promotion. If you enjoyed today's focus session, please be our ambassador and tell your friends about the work of AviAssist. Make sure they join us next time too. We'd love for you to post a picture of yourself with your certificate of this session on LinkedIn. If you want us to continue with these sessions, become a friend of AviAssist. You can do that in our web shop, www.aviassist.org/shop. Come and visit us at our first AviAssist Safety Promotion Center, the ASPC Rwanda. Lots of exciting courses still coming up in 2024 in our center at the University of Rwanda. We'll be delivering several courses across Africa in the remainder of the year. For example, we'll run a peer support course and an air law course in South Africa from the 11th to the 20th of September in Johannesburg, in partnership with Aviation Africa 2024 and the Airlines Association of Southern Africa. And please don't forget, only you can target safety. We look forward to continuing our mission with you to improve African aviation safety. Join us for the next focus session on World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, when we'll be talking about mental well-being beyond cockpit and cabin crew. Same time, same frequency. For now, we say Tiza Onana to our Nyanja viewers and see you next time to the rest of us.